Hare Krishna. Suhas, can you tell me if they can hear? They can hear me? Hare Krishna. Alright, let me just start. In any case, we can adjust it along the way. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shatatmane Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswatevam Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhisesha Shunyavat Paschate Desatarine Om Ajnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptha Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Nityananda Vadutendur Vasudha Prana Vallabha Janava Jivita Patihi Krishna Prema Prada Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Sriman Sachinandana Purvajaha Bhavonmatta Jagatrata Rakta Gaura Kalevaraha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Rishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibhatatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namah Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. So we stopped at verse 2.64. Did we do 2.64? We did. So continuing from the previous session, not so much the previous session here, but from the previous week, we just want to touch upon a few concepts. The fundamental concept is, we have spoken about this several times, the fundamental concept is that by nature we are pleasure seekers. By nature we are pleasure seekers. Isn't it? So it is our birthright to be happy. So by nature the soul is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Ananda is our birthright. So one who is in suffering, or rather one who is exhibiting symptoms of material consciousness, a symptom of material consciousness, specific symptom of material consciousness, is to suffer. Suffering is a symptom of material consciousness because spiritual consciousness is Satchitananda. Ananda, which is a birthright for the spirit, cannot be covered by suffering. So one who is suffering is basically in material consciousness. So birthright of a soul is Ananda. There's no denial there. So now the pursuit of Ananda is taken up by us right from inception in every activity. The pursuit of pleasure is taken up by us. So we have a pursuit of pleasure at the bodily level, pursuit of pleasure at the mental level, pursuit of pleasure at the spiritual level. the pursuit of pleasure is taken up by us. There's no doubt about it. We cannot refrain from seeking pleasure because that's our original nature. We cannot refrain from constantly putting ourselves in positions where we can obtain pleasure, we can obtain happiness because that's our birthright. So one cannot be in denial saying that they would put themselves under great suffering, and that could possibly result in spiritual progress. That can in fact harden the heart. When one performs austerities with certain objectives which are not to please Krishna, it will harden the heart. It does not help in advancing spiritual consciousness. Right? The asuras, the demons, are experts in performing austerities. They can stay without food, they can stay without water, they can stay in extremely harsh conditions, they can even basically cut themselves up as an offering. We have seen all of this happen in the Puranas, where the demons have the capacity to perform austerities. And they have the capacity to perform charity. They have the capacity to perform various other activities. They can be very religious. Ravana was completely religious. He was very, very religious in terms of being able to do puja for Lord Shiva and so on and so forth. So the demons have those qualities as well. But that is material consciousness. The real pursuit is that we have to recognize that we are pleasure seekers by nature. It is just that if we seek pleasure at the bodily level or at the mental level, we would be compromising on the pleasure which is rightfully ours, which is available at the spiritual level, because that's who we are. That is who we are. Srila Prabhupada used to compare this pursuit of seeking pleasure at the bodily level as licking the outer surface of a bottle of honey. So there is some understanding and knowledge that there is honey, right? So one can perceive it. There's pratyaksha, one can see that there's honey in the bottle. One has heard from others that it is sweet, right? But then to experience the sweetness, one cannot just essentially lick the outer surface. They will have to be able to dive in for them to be able to experience the taste of honey. Similarly, for a human being, for us to be able to obtain the pleasure that we are entitled to, that cannot happen superficially at the level of the body. So we seek pleasure at the level of the body. We are essentially seeking pleasure in the mode of ignorance and mixed with passion. Ignorance mixed with passion. Ignorance mixed with passion, we seek pleasure. Passion, we seek pleasure at the level of the body. That attaches us to the body, right? It makes us averse to certain aspects of life which are not so conducive for bodily happiness. Right? Someone who is in passion is very attached to family members. There's a big distinction between the word attachment and affection. It does not mean that a spiritualist is not close to the family members. A spiritualist is not attached. A spiritualist is not attached, meaning the family members will never ever pose or an obstacle to the path of spirituality because he is not attached. He would never allow them. On the other hand, a spiritualist is affectionate towards family members. And affection is such that the family members would also be trained to keep Krishna in the center. So there's a distinction between spiritual family life and material family life. One is a level of attachment, the other is affection. Understanding that this is a soul, I'm responsible for this soul, and this soul also needs Krishna. The soul doesn't need me. This soul needs Krishna. That's the only source of happiness for the soul. How can I facilitate it? Right? So the whole objective is that when we start seeking happiness at the level of the body, then we are in the mode of passion, ignorance. What is the specific mode in which we seek happiness from the mind? What is it which we seek for the mind at all times? Mental peace. Mental peace is constantly sought by us, and this is a disease born forth by the mode of goodness. This is a mental disease. It's a disease born forth by the mode of goodness. Because the mode of goodness seeks peace. And there's nothing wrong with seeking peace because it's surely better than being attached to the body. So you have people moving away to the mountains, moving away to the forest, taking refuge of quiet places and so on and so forth, where they feel that mental peace is very important. But even better than mental peace is one who is ready to give up mental peace for the attainment and for the pleasure of Krishna. That's Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness does not even aim for mental peace. Mental peace is not the objective of a spiritualist. Do not be bewildered by this. Do not be confused between these objectives. It's very easy for us to set an objective which is pleasurable for us. And a pleasurable objective is mental peace. And we are not pursuing mental peace. That is not the recommendation of the Bhagawad Gita. Imagine the circumstances which Arjuna came into. Did he come into circumstances of mental peace? He came into circumstances of great mental suffering, and that is seen in the first chapter. Krishna starts preaching to him in the second chapter, bringing him from a position of great mental suffering, because Arjuna indeed is seeking what? What is he seeking? He is seeking mental peace. I do not want to perform this duty, Krishna, because the enemies who are in front of me are my uncle, they are my guru, they are my grandfather. By killing them, how will I be happy? By killing them, how will others be happy? What kind of happiness can I possibly have by having a kingdom with nobody around who could possibly be with me? Because that's one of the objectives, right? It's meaningless and pointless for someone to have objectives if they don't have anybody to show it to. What's the point? It's like training a child at home. The child consistently scores 60 out of 100, considered very good. But then 60 out of 100 is not quite the mark, because you have children at school who are doing 90 out of 100. So unless you bring the child and you mix them with others, they would not know as to what the standard is, be it good, be it bad. So there's a certain level of comparison and relativity which is required for us to understand what is needed, what is not needed. No one is interested in pursuing things for their own pleasure. It's not. We pursue things for collective pleasure. It could be for the family. Right? Someone who does not have a proper familial background, who does not have a family, who does not have a proper situation, is almost in a mood of being renounced, because they do not have the commitment, they do not have such, a focus for them to be able to attain our aspects. It's difficult for them. Do we understand? So mental peace is not the objective of spiritual consciousness. Mental peace is not the objective of Krishna consciousness. Arjun had this problem. This problem occurs in the mode of goodness, Sattva Gun. Sattva Gun is also a material mode. It's very much within the material sphere. Now, I am not saying peace is bad. Peace is required. A prerequisite for happiness is peace, but do not make it an objective, because that's not your objective. Our objective lies beyond mental peace. Our objective lies beyond our mental platform. Our objective is transcendental. Krishna is above the modes of nature. Mental peace is in the mode of goodness. Is it not? So what one has to realize is that when you come into Krishna consciousness and when you're seeking the samam bonam, when you're seeking something which is far beyond the material realm, be prepared to pay the price. No one wants to suffer. Suffering has no glory in it. There's no glory in poverty. There's no glory in suffering. Honestly, there isn't any. But if there is a need for suffering, and there is a need for pain, which is not pleasurable either to the body or to the mind, but which is necessary for the service of the Lord, such pain, such suffering is welcome. That's the mood of a devotee. Such pain, such suffering is welcome. I would be very happy sitting in Vrindavan. I would be very happy sitting in Mayapur. Right? Srila Prabhupada, for instance, would be very happy sitting in Mayapur, sitting in Vrindavan. He would have been very happy. But then why would he leave Vrindavan, leave Mayapur, and then come to the US and then go through what he has to go through? Because this pleases the Lord. Spreading the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is most pleasing. So now you have a situation. My body is inconvenienced. I'm 70 years old. I'm just talking, paraphrasing, but I'm putting Srila Prabhupada's situation. body is 70 years old. My mind is completely engaged in devotional service in the Samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan. But yet I have the mission given by my Guru to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. This is most pleasing to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if this requires that I get on a ship at a 70-year age, I get inconvenienced, I travel for 2 months, I come here, and then I live with people who are not quite trained in Vedic consciousness, I put up with circumstances which are not conducive for my sadhana or for whatever I'm used to. It is quite far away. And in fact, everyone around me hates the object of my love. Imagine being in this room. Imagine being in this room and you like something and you have a whole room full of people who hate the person you love. How will that feel? That is the consciousness of a pure devotee. A pure devotee is in love with Krishna. And when he comes into an environment of material consciousness, such pure devotees experience that the material consciousness is nothing but hatred of Krishna. It's very difficult. So those circumstances are extremely austere, and those circumstances surely are not conducive for mental peace. But a transcendentally situated devotee, a devotee pursuing Krishna consciousness, is not having mental peace as an objective. His objective is to serve the senses of Krishna. By serving the senses of Krishna, he experiences ananda, which is not at the physical, not at the mental level, it is at the spiritual level. Do you understand? One cannot be without ananda because it's our birthright. We are Satchit Ananda deep within. Krishna is Satchit Ananda. We are part and parcels of Krishna. So seeking ananda is our birthright. Seeking pleasure is our birthright. So we cannot be without pleasure. It has to be either on the physical platform or on the mental platform or both or neither. It has to be on the spiritual platform. That's how a sadhu can live in very austere conditions, because his happiness does not depend on whether the body is getting meals, whether the body is getting taken care of, whether someone is around to recognize me. And what is this mental situation? Mental situation, I can give you an example. What are the 4 activities that a human being performs consistently? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. At any given time, we pursue these activities, and every activity that we do is centered around eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. Now, consider this whole aspect of defending. Defense is nothing but a need for safety. Does everybody agree? Defense has the objective of making ourselves safe. And defense essentially also has another connotation. On the physical platform, it is safety. On the mental platform, it is being with someone. You see, being with someone in life and not being lonely is a great source of strength. It's on the mental platform. Just as much as every other activity has a mental counterpart, safety's mental counterpart is having someone to live with. Right? Prisoners in America, worldwide, they consider a very unusual, most cruel punishment for prisoners is to put them in a cell with no one around, solitary confinement for 3 months. It's considered extremely unusual. They turn the lights on, they keep the TV on, and the fellow has maybe a pot or something like that, and then, a bed. That's it. No physical contact with anyone for 2, 3 months, 4 months, depending on the severity of the crime, or even longer. That's considered extremely unusual, most cruel, and completely, extraordinary punishment. This prisoner would rather be with other prisoners who can rape him, who can beat him up, who can kill him. He would rather be with them than be safe within a cell with the TV and so on and so forth. That's considered cruel. Now, can you imagine what that is all about? This is nothing but the psychological need for company. Without socializing, a human being does not remain so, because it's a very important psychological need. But have you noticed the sadhus go away alone to the forest? It's quite the opposite. The sadhus seek, call it solitary confinement. They don't mind. Oh, put me in solitary confinement so I can practice bhajan. Bhakti Vinod Thakur used to have a door which was 7 inches thick. It was a wooden door. He had 11 children. 11 young children at home. He had to practice sadhana. He had a 7-inch thick door which used to completely insulate sound and so on and so forth. He could practice sadhana in his room. Right? So a sadhu seeks solitary confinement, while materialists seek company even at the danger of being beaten up, even at the danger of being assaulted, because that company is a psychological need. Have you seen this? Very old, invalid people. They're invalid. They're invalid because they're sitting on a wheelchair. They seek the company of another person in the same house who is also sitting on a wheelchair. They feel safe. Have you seen this? Right? It's incredible because you see that both people are physically disabled. They're incapable of assisting one another because either of them probably cannot hear, can't do anything. But they feel safe if there's one more disabled person who is also sitting on a wheelchair, who is invalid, who needs help, but they are in the same house. Incredible. This is nothing but the need for safety in the psyche of the human being. Social. So this is nothing but a mental peace situation. This is nothing but a situation which requires some psychological help in the mind. But on the contrary, if it requires that one go out and preach, one go out and do certain activities, they do it without even hesitation. Right? Can you imagine this? So Srila Prabhupada comes all the way here and he has to meet with people who do not like the object of his love. They probably hate him. They hate Krishna. They're atheistic. He has to be in this environment. He has to survive in an environment where nothing is according to his standards. This has nothing to do with the body. It has nothing to do with the mind. How could Prabhupada have survived? How could he have focused on this mission? Because he was spiritually completely focused. He was experiencing Ananda. Every time there was a sacrifice being done, he was experiencing Ananda. It is not so wonderful that it has to consistently be bad. You have to understand this. Right? But all I'm trying to say is that that's exactly how a spiritualist focuses. You don't focus on the mind, you don't focus on the body. The mind will tell you not to wake up. The mind will tell you 100 things. The mind has kept us incarcerated in one of these bodies for millions of lifetimes. So the mind does not want to let go. Please understand that. The mind has kept us incarcerated. We are stuck. Imagine living with a person who knows you so well, who knows every step of yours, who is completely knowledgeable, but who is completely inimical to your objectives. Because this person knows you so well, knows every weakness of yours, knows history. For millions of lifetimes, you don't know, but knows history. Such a person does not want to let go easily. So there has to be a little bit of a struggle. There has to be a fight. And we have to understand that the more and more we learn to do things that may not be pleasurable to the mind, may not be pleasurable to the body, but are pleasing to Guru and Krishna, that will surely assure success. One more factor that you can see, even in the material world. Very few people are really successful who do things that everybody likes. Have you seen it? You can never be successful if you can only do things which everybody else also likes to do. You have to be someone who is able to take on activity and actually have some rigor, have some discipline, have some character which is unusual. If everybody comes to work at 9 o'clock, if you're going to be reaching there at 7:30, that was tough, but it was required. You could put in the extra hour and a half. You could stay after work and put in the extra hour and a half. That's going to make you distinguished. The athlete who practices far beyond a normal person's sports activity is the one who is going to be successful. How can anyone do the same thing as everyone else does and yet stand out? How could you stand out? Is there any logic to it? You cannot. You cannot succeed by doing exactly what the other guy does. Or at least you cannot be distinct. So even for material success, one has to be distinct. Be it academic pursuit, be it professional pursuit, be it sports, be it anything. You have to be distinguished, you have to be special, you have to do something which is far beyond what the normal capacity of your neighbor is. So that's how you stand out, you get noticed, you move forward. This is material life. So why should we expect that when we come to spiritual life, why should we expect that when we come to Krishna consciousness, we would continue doing what everybody else does, which is go through a life which is completely focused on the body, go through a life which will not take on any trouble whatsoever, any kind of disturbance. It would be a life which would just say, I would go from point A to point B, and yet expect to be rewarded. What kind of an expectation is that? Is that even reasonable? That if in material life you have to go above and beyond for you to succeed, for spirituality, which is going to end all the material travails for millions of lifetimes, if we are not ready to even take the most simpler of steps, isn't it astonishing? That material happiness is fleeting, be it at the mental level or the physical level. If you are not ready to go the extra mile, how do you expect that you are entitled to spiritual bliss? What kind of an expectation is this? Is it reasonable? It requires sacrifice. You had something to say? Well, being restless is even worse than having mental peace. Being restless, and why is this restlessness all about? What is this anxiety all about? The anxiety is about future. We are worried that we will not be able to eat, sleep, mate, defend in the same way as we are doing now. That's anxiety. Every stress-related disorder is related to, I may not be able to have the same facility of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. This is what makes people restless. This is what makes people constantly strive to improve, because they're restless that what they have could go away, or what they aspire for could never come. That's even worse than one who is peaceful. All I'm trying to say is, even beyond the fellow who is restless is one who is peaceful, which is very nice, because he can get up in the morning, he can wake up, he's sattvic, he can take up the beads, he can do some chanting. But if he rests his raw laurels right there, if he thinks that he has attained Krishna consciousness, if he thinks that that's happiness, then that's a problem. I've had many of you ask me, Prabhu, I have a good job, my family life is good, I have money, I have everything, I don't really see a need. I'm happy actually, I don't see a need for Krishna. I don't see a need for Krishna consciousness because everything seems to be going so well. Honestly, and no, they were very honest, honestly. There was nothing wrong with the questioning. It was very legitimate, it was a proper question, it was directed saying, every area of my life seems to be peaceful. So why do you expect me to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and chant? Why are you asking me to trouble myself when everything seems to be so peaceful? Right? Now, this is someone who is conditioned by the mode of goodness. This is conditioning by the mode of goodness. This is sattva. Sattva will condition you to constantly seek peace. And all I'm trying to say is that we are seeking service. We are seeking the pleasure of Krishna. Be prepared. Be prepared to go the extra mile. Be prepared to go the extra mile. I was just reflecting on it. I was reflecting on Srila Prabhupada. I was reflecting on the servants of Srila Prabhupada. How amazing they were. Brahmananda Prabhu was asked by Prabhupada to go to Pakistan. Okay, where's the money? No money. Make it to Pakistan. Okay. Somehow or the other he traveled by land and reached Pakistan, and he sat on Pakistan, wherever it is, in Islamabad or Lahore or Karachi, and he started chanting. So he was white. Since he was white, they didn't really beat him up, they didn't kill him because, he's American, he probably had some immunity in that one sense or the other. But he started chanting on the road, people spat at him. People threw stones. They disparaged him. But yet he was there because Srila Prabhupada said, go there and chant. He went and he did. It helped him tremendously, right? Because now you have this particular barrier in your mind. And that barrier is being taken away. Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami, he was asked by Prabhupada to go to China. I've shared this before. And he went to China with no one to receive him. My spiritual master was asked by Prabhupada to go to Africa. No one to receive him. He landed in Africa, no money. He used to sleep on the footsteps of the local Hindu temple. Because he was black-bodied, he was not allowed inside the Hindu temple because even though he was a sannyasi, he was carrying a danda, he was wearing saffron, they didn't recognize him because they said, you have a black body. You know, your heart can't belong to Krishna. So he was lying in front of the Hindu temple in, I don't know, one of those West African countries. He used to lie on the steps. He used to have his bath on the roadside plumbing. And then he used to go to the vegetable market and pick up all the rotten vegetables which were thrown away. He used to wash them and he used to eat raw vegetables. This was diet. So now you start thinking about it, that all they did was follow the orders of their guru. This allowed them to capsize a big wall of false ego. A big wall that identified with what is the body supposed to do. This body is supposed to give me pleasure. This mind is supposed to give me pleasure. When you start following the orders of the guru and you take up mission, the guru's blessings are with you and there is Shakti available. And when you go and you want to act on those orders, automatically those orders are meant for purifying you. Automatically those orders purify us immensely. We don't question those orders, we take it up as a life and soul. And we move ahead. Right? Mother Malati and Shyam Sundar Prabhu, they were asked to go to London. Who is there to receive them in London? No one. And they are American kids, they are probably 21, 22. They go to London. No one to receive them, no one to take care of them. Mother Malati had a very small child, and Shyam Sundar Prabhu used to stay with someone. Mother Malati used to stay in a homeless shelter. She used to live in a cardboard box in a homeless shelter. The Guru ordered them, go to London, establish a center. That's how this movement started. Set it up. Go to London, set it up. They went. So now imagine a circumstance, put yourself in their shoes. If we were seekers of mental peace, if we were seekers of physical peace, would we have been able to do this? But would that have been an obstacle on the path of Krishna consciousness? Yes or no? It will be. It will be. It becomes an obstacle in the path of Krishna consciousness when we are seeking peace. Complacency, the same patterns. Some amount of agitation is required for us to move forward. Material energy is very thick. It is 25 layers thick, material energy. If we have to penetrate material energy and reach the spiritual platform, it requires intensity. That intensity comes through instructions of the Guru. When we take it up with seriousness, that gives us the intensity. Intensity is one who is constantly agitating your mind. Your mind is agitating you. You turn around and agitate the mind. Constantly devise strategies. What can I do to improve? What can I do to improve? I have a certain situation now. I'm reading, I'm chanting, I'm serving, I'm associating. What can I do to improve? You start agitating your mind. Pick up the books and start reading. If we don't understand, read more. Agitate the mind. Because when you consume energy, be it at the mental or physical level, and when you go deeper into it, you automatically make progress because you're penetrating the thickness, the layers. Don't you see what is happening here? What is your original identity? Being a servant of Krishna, that is at the core. Every other identity is outside of it. Every other identity is based on the mental or physical platform. When you start acting completely oblivious of suffering to the mental or physical platform, what level of identity are you holding on to? The internal identity of Krishna consciousness. So the sooner you do it, the greater you do it, more intense it becomes, you reach that position. You can break down your patterns. You can break down, as a human being, we can break down, rearrange our patterns. Just before coming here, I was just browsing and I was watching a National Geographic video on the training that is being given at West Point. You know the West Point Military Academy? West Point Military Academy is for officers of the U.S. Army. So they pick up young soldiers, men and women. They have just graduated from high school, so they are completely untrained, completely indisciplined, completely disoriented. They have no prior military experience, most of them. They bring them in, and what do they have to do first? First, they have to break them down. You have to break down all the material, mental resistance they have. So they break them down to such an extent that they are taught how to eat. I was just seeing it and it was incredible. There was this cadet who was actually saying, the military, the academy, saying they are supposed to chew everything within 5 bites. Not more than 5 bites. They're given a plate, you're supposed to pick up a bite in a spoon which is just small enough so that it could go in and you could finish eating in 5 bites. Can you imagine the amount of pressure and training where you're taught how to eat? How many times can you chew before you swallow? How many times do you have to swallow to finish your plate? Okay, and there's someone sitting on the table, and unless that person says eat, they don't start eating. The moment that person puts the fork down, everybody puts their fork down, even if you're hungry. Okay? It's incredible. What are they doing? They're basically breaking down the person's resistance. They're breaking down patterns. It's a pattern, it's a samskara. Is it not? For millions of lifetimes, we have this samskara of moving away from the Lord. We have this samskara of enjoying through the body, enjoying through the mind. And then when we come into Krishna consciousness, we get into sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is like military training. You're forced to train yourself. You're forced to break down the patterns that you established over millions of lifetimes. Wake up at a certain time. You don't like it, Srila Prabhupada likes it, wake up at 4 a.m. Go to bed at a certain time. You cannot eat this. You can only eat this. These are mental patterns. Break it down, accept it. Because now you're forced to take on orders from the spiritual master. And he is training you to become a pure servant of the Lord because it's focused on the internal identity of being a servant of Krishna. Isn't it incredible? Military training is just that. That lady was actually showing us her room in the academy. It was in the mode of goodness. Wooden frames, not hundreds of clothes, 4 uniforms. Everything has to be neat. The bed was folded, and it was incredible. She said that particular length, after folding it, it has to be 13 inches. Otherwise, you get disciplined. Incredible. You fold your bed in the morning, it has to be 13 inches across. You know that white pot? You have the brown, and then you have the white that folds over it. 13 inches. Okay, they come and they do this. If they find dust, you are in trouble. Isn't it amazing? So they basically break the person down and they're putting everything back together. Okay. You do nothing alone. You do it always with your team. Okay? It's a fact. If you don't do that in army, you die. If you don't have that kind of discipline, you die. I've shared this before. Years back, we had a driver at home, my father's driver. He was from the army. And he used to tell me stories of how the army life was. And he used to tell me that his officers used to say, "Tum gade ho," right, in Hindi, that you are a donkey. And they used to reply back saying, "Yes, we are donkeys." Absolutely no qualms. They had no problem in calling themselves because, if you're a donkey, you're a donkey. You've got to take it up. That's it. There was absolutely no freedom of thought left. They used to break them down. They used to break them down and discipline them to such an extent that they would act on orders, they would act on exactly what they need to do, they would not act freely. So all of this is being accomplished in the army. Isn't it amazing? What I'm trying to tell you now is not so much to tell you about West Point. I'm trying to tell you that the human mind is capable of being trained. The human mind is capable of being broken apart and put together again. The human mind has immense capacity for discipline, immense capacity for structure, form. If you train it, it's going to become that. Studies have said that if you do anything for 21 days consistently, it will become a habit. 21 days, you wake up at a certain time, it's going to become a habit. Isn't it? So it's incredible opportunity because there's such flexibility available, there's such help available, and it's been done before. It's been done before. The objective that we have is even more loftier than any military academy or any sports or anything. Our objective is eternal. Do you know what our objective is? One of the main objectives is that we do not want to get into one of these bodies. This body is a problem. If you don't recognize it, you're in trouble. This body is not wonderful. It's a liability. And there's a way to avoid getting one of these. Again, what we have right now is a bad bargain. It's not a good bargain, it's a bad bargain. What we have right now is a bad bargain. So we have to make the best use of a bad bargain. What is the best use of a bad bargain? Is to train it, discipline it, and use it in the service of the Lord. That may not give mental peace, that may not give physical pleasure, but ultimately it will reach a point of spiritual pleasure. That's what this is all about. We have to bring in the discipline. And look at what we do in Krishna consciousness. I'm talking so much about discipline, I'm talking about 5 times you eat and you chew 5 times. Right? We spend more time focusing on prasadam than any other religion. We spend more time focusing on prasadam than any other form of spirituality. How many people in the world can possibly claim that we eat sweets every week? We eat sweets more than once a week. There's dessert 2-3 times a week in our lives. Can't you see that? There's this program, that program, we go there, they serve dessert. Nobody eats dessert. I was in New York in my workplace, and I was saying that I had a bowl of ice cream last night, and someone there remembered, and they said, you told us that you had a bowl of ice cream 3 days back, so you had it already twice in 1 week? You said you have had dessert twice in 1 week already? They were completely incredulous. You know, what kind of a life is yours that you're eating dessert twice a week? They don't know that it's even more. Right? They don't know that it's even more. What kind of austerity are we performing in Krishna consciousness? Why are we trying to kid ourselves saying as though it's compared to the West Point? I was just giving you an example. We have to wake up and call out the Lord's names which are pleasurable, which are the source of all pleasure. We honor prasadam with very good people. Devotees are exemplary. They are wonderful. They are very good to be with. We hear Krishna Katha. We lead absolutely healthy, clean lives otherwise. We don't have habits which other people struggle with. We don't have any intoxication problem. Right? Our aspirations for the future are quite simple, is it not? We don't aspire for huge things. Our aspirations are quite simple, which in itself is a hallmark for peace. So what is it which we are doing which is so difficult? Why is it that this can be done over a long time? Why is it that we are holding back? Why is it that we can't give everything? What is so difficult about this? Nothing is difficult about Krishna consciousness. That is the Yuga Dharma. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is Audarya. Mayapur is called Audarya. Sri Mayapur Dham next to near Calcutta is called Audarya Dham. Audarya means what? Kripa. Audarya means mercy. He is Audarya. So whenever I read Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandho Jagatpate, in my eyes I can only see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I cannot see Krishna. I can only see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, who is mercy personified, who is Audarya personified. Audarya, 100%. Amazing. Right? And what did he do? He gave us this beautiful, beautiful way of being able to attain the lotus feet of the Lord. And we have problems with that. Prabhu, we are struggling. Prabhu, I am struggling with spiritual life. I have a problem with eating. I have a problem with eating prasadam, associating and chanting the holy names. If you have a problem, and I'm telling this, I know a lot of guys are listening. How many of them are online now? 12. So there are 12 families. So 12 families plus whoever is here, if you have a problem with following the Yuga Dharma, you have a problem. I'm telling you that much. There's nothing in this world which you will be able to work with. I'm not trying to disappoint you. I'm not trying to put you down. If I'm trying to tell you is what has been given to you is the easiest and the best. It is the Yuga Dharma. It has the entire blessings of the Lord behind it. If you cannot take this up, you have a problem. Look at yourself very seriously. Look at yourself in the mirror when you go home. We have problems, big problems we need to talk, because this is something which is super simple. If we cannot take this up, we have a problem. We have resistance to it, we have a problem. Because this is the Yuga Dharma. We have a problem and we need to talk. Maybe there's some other way, but we have to talk, honestly. So, her question is, what is Yuga Dharma? Yuga Dharma, every Yuga, be it Kali Yuga, different types of Kali Yuga. In one day of Lord Brahma's life, in one day, there are 1,000 Yuga cycles. 1,000 Satya Yugas, 1,000 Treta Yugas, 1,000 Kali Yugas, 1,000 Dwapara Yugas. In all those 1,000 Yuga cycles of Kali Yugas, there is one particular Kali Yuga where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears to distribute the holy names. And that becomes the dharma for that particular yuga for the souls to move forward and go back to Godhead. In Treta Yuga, the form of sacrifice was established. In Dwapar Yuga, it was deity worship, was the means to go back. In Satya Yuga, it was meditation. In Kali Yuga, especially this Kali Yuga, the Yuga Dharma is introduced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is the congregational chanting of the holy names. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Namaiva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, 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 Gatir Anyata. Nastyeva, 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 Gatir Anyata. 3 times. There are no other means, no other means, no other means other than chanting of the holy names of the Lord, because this is Kali Yuga. This is from the Puranas. This is from scriptures. Do we understand? So this is specifically what the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is all about. So you're seeing Arjuna as a candidate who is coming in with immense concern for the physical well-being of others. But who are others? They are extensions of his body in one way or the other. Aren't they? So there's a concern for physical well-being. There's a concern for mental happiness. Fame, infamy. Arjuna is talking about fame. Fame is a mental attribute. Krishna challenges all of this and says that none of this is okay. He allows Arjuna to speak, and Arjuna finally accedes and he says, okay, I'm your disciple, I'm your servant, I'm ready to hear from you. The first thing which Krishna says is, how did such contamination come upon you? You're such a learned person. How did such contamination come upon you? Because this is nothing but material contamination. Contamination which focuses on the body. Contamination which focuses on the mind. You know, in our society, when we come in touch with a dead body, we're asked to have a bath. When we go to a funeral home, we go to a ceremony where there's a dead body, you have to have a bath when you come home because there's contamination. Right? If there has been a death in the family, we are asked not to worship the deities. And there's a reason for that, because the mind is contaminated in the mode of ignorance. Because if there's a death in the family, the mind is focusing on the dead person to such an extent, it is focusing on dead matter. And that is contaminating, and with that contamination, you cannot approach and worship the deities. Right? When one is very sad and crying, you're not supposed to worship the deities, because that is nothing but a focus on the body. Right? So in such circumstances, one realizes that when we say that contamination, Krishna says, Kashmalam. He says, Kashmalam, this is nothing but contamination. How did this happen to you, Arjun? How did you get so contaminated? How did your thought process become so contaminated? He is referring to the mode of ignorance which is associated with the body coming upon the mind. And what is the solution for contamination? What is the solution for this mode of ignorance? He starts talking about samadhi. He starts talking about being transcendentally situated. He then proceeds on and then starts talking about a situation where he says, if one who is able to attain freedom by pursuing regulative principles, right? That is verse 64. But a person free from all attachment and aversion. How can you be free from all attachment and aversion? When will we be attached? When will we be averse? When we are the center, then we are going to be worried about whether something is going to give me pleasure or something is not going to give me pleasure. If something is going to give me pleasure, we become attached. Something is going to give me suffering, we become averse. Because we are in the center. So one who is completely free from attachment and aversion is one who is free from body consciousness. Someone who is not dependent on this body for pleasure is not going to be bothered by bodily pain. Such a person can experience pain without suffering. Big difference between pain and suffering. You can experience pain with no suffering. Because you are not dependent on the body for pleasure, you are not going to be affected by the body when it's in pain. Does it make sense? If I am going to be extremely attached to pleasure to this body, then do you all agree that I am body conscious? Yes or no? Yeah. So if I am body conscious, this material world is such that the world is going to turn around and circumstances will come upon me where there will be pain that will be inflicted. If I am going to have immense body consciousness while I am getting pleasure, I cannot withdraw it when pain comes. Can I? Someone who has constantly pursued happiness will have to face pain. If there is happiness from an object, there will be pain from the same object. The extent to which I am attached to that object, to that extent I will experience pain. It's logical. So if someone is attached to getting happiness, they would also be averse to suffering. Someone who is neither attached to happiness nor averse to suffering is one who is not body conscious. Do you understand? Very simple. But if they are not body conscious and they are not attached to getting happiness, how can they be happy? How can they be happy? Good. So you use your senses, the body, you use your mind, you use your intelligence, and you connect it to Krishna. By doing so, your spiritual happiness starts blossoming. The more and more and more my spiritual happiness increases, the less and less and less I am dependent on the body for material happiness. The more and more and more my spiritual happiness increases, the more and more and more I become more and more I become detached. I don't become attached to the body. The less and less and less I become averse. I don't simply say, if this circumstances comes, my body will suffer, my mind will suffer, I don't want this to happen. Krishna, this is service to you, but I don't want to do it. Because my body is going to be inconvenienced. My mind is going to be inconvenienced. Right? And how many of you are packing your bags and going to Africa tomorrow? How many of you? Show up your hands. Are you going to Russia? Are you going to go in a steamship for 2 months while you're 70 years old? Are you going to go into a territory with just $7 in your pocket? With no one to receive you? Are you going to be living in a homeless shelter? None of these. That's the beauty. All we are going to be doing is to wake up in the morning in the comfort of our home and chanting. That's all we're going to be doing. That's the ask. That's the demand for us in our lives as of now. If you do not train yourself to go against the desires of your mind and your body while the going is good. And I'm not saying, and I'm not giving any blessings here, that the going is going to be bad in the future. All I'm trying to say is when life turns around and it becomes tough on you, you will be prepared. A student who practices on a weekly basis is capable of excelling in quarterly tests. A student who excels in the quarterly exam is capable of excelling in the half-yearly. Someone who excels in the half-yearly is fully prepared to meet the annual exam. So we have an annual exam, every one of us. It may not occur this year, it may occur some year. Are we prepared? So we need to practice when the going is good. We need to be able to put in our effort. We need to train ourselves. This is peace times. So when war starts and when there's agitation in our lives, then we have the capacity to deal with this. So if we are going to be lax, we are going to be complacent when the going is good, we will have no capacity to take on the world when the going is bad. Where's going to be the capacity? Do we understand? So someone who is averse, someone who is attached, is in body consciousness. The more and more and more we move away from being body conscious, more and more we move away from being in the center and keep Krishna in the center, we would be able to deal with life. This is practical. Okay? Now, what's the next verse? 65. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanir ashyopajayate prasanna chetosho hiyashu buddhihi paryavatistate. This is text 65, chapter 2. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Now look at this. Dukkhanam, sarva dukkhanam. Sarva dukkhanam, what is the meaning? In all kinds of miseries. Hanir, what is the meaning? Destruction. Right? So in sarva dukkhanam, hanir, such a person is not affected because such a person has moved away from the physical platform and he is seeking happiness at the level of the soul. Since he is satisfied from within, he is not dependent on disruptions. He is not disrupted by the economy. He is not disrupted by a job. He is not disrupted by health. He is not disrupted by relationship problems. Why? Because his happiness is not dependent on any of this. It's not dependent on the body. It's dependent on the existence of the soul, connecting it to Krishna. If 90% of the happiness comes at that level, that person will not be agitated. 100% of the happiness comes, no agitation whatsoever. They would not be agitated no matter what the circumstances are because they are not dependent on the world for their source of bliss. And a living entity needs bliss. No one can sustain suffering. So a spiritualist is happy. He's thrilled. He is blissful. And that comes when you steadily practice your sadhana. When we steadily call out the holy names. When we steadily serve, we steadily take up reading. We take on all of this and one assures that he is prepared for the exams that are going to come. During peace times and during times when things are lax, if you're not going to be prepared, you're going to be in trouble when the exam comes. Right? How many of you have done all-night reading? I've done some. Right? And that was really tough, wasn't it? All-night reading. Thinking that we can accomplish whatever we need to accomplish in one night, which is supposed to have been accomplished in a whole year. That was ridiculous. We tried it. We ended up having fun even that night. Didn't we? Right? So it's just ridiculous to think that that's accomplishable in Krishna consciousness, that you can just relax and you can be complacent, you can go and then do whatever you want, and then suddenly when the world turns upside down, and trust me, this is the material world, it can turn upside down. Do you expect that you would be able to handle that? The answer is no. And I'm not talking about mental peace. I'm talking about, do you think you can continue your sadhana if your world turns upside down? That's my concern. My concern is not about whether we're going to be peaceful if things are not conducive. We surely are not going to be peaceful. But at least can you continue your sadhana? You cannot. If you do not know how to do it now, you will not be able to do it then. It's 100%. One who is a sadhaka will be able to do it now, they will be able to do it then because there's discipline. This is the purpose of training. This is the purpose of establishing samskaras. Wake up in the morning at exactly the same time. Sit in the same spot while you do your japa. Do the same activities as soon as you wake up and before you sit for japa. You are establishing patterns. You are establishing samskaras. The mind will find it difficult to take you away from that pattern even if the whole world breaks down. Because the mind operates by patterns. You establish a pattern, the mind is going to be able to stick to it. Establish those samskaras. The mind can be trained. Sit in the same spot. When you come to that spot, the mind will stop agitating because it knows you're going to be doing one kind of activity. Do you understand? What's the time, Suhas? Okay, I'm going to read verse 66. It's more or less the same topic. So I almost addressed it at all times. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana nachabhavyataha santir ashantasya kutah sukam. Ashantasya kutah sukam is a very interesting statement. Someone who has no peace, how can they be happy? Ashantasya kutah sukam. If you cannot be peaceful, how can you be happy? Okay, let's read the verse. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So now two words here which we want to focus on. Neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. Now what is a steady mind? How does it become steady? Go back to the example that I have shared before. The analogy, the allegory which I have used before. Analogy. I have compared the human body, it's an allegory, with a chariot. Have we not? So the human body is a chariot, the senses are the horses, the reins are the mind, the charioteer is intelligence, the passenger is the soul. Right? How can, the question here, how can the mind be steady? What is the mind in this example? The reins. How can they be steady? They can be steady in two ways. They can be steady in two ways. Think about it. How can they be steady? Good. One, the horses don't run around here and there. The reins can be steady. What is the other way of keeping the reins steady? The charioteer is holding the reins steadily. The reins can be steady. Agreed? In both ways. So now, one who is situated in samadhi, samadhistasya, he is such a person who has gone so deep that his happiness lies at the spiritual level and his senses are steady. His senses are not agitating the reins. So the mind is steady. The intelligence is completely surrendered to the soul. There's no lust in the intelligence. And what is lust? Lust is where we are in the center and our senses need to be pleased. When there is no lust, Krishna is in the center. His senses have to be given pleasure. So when there is no lust in intelligence, there are no lust in the senses, there are no lust in the mind, then everything is steady. And the intelligence is able to hold on to the reins because the mind is not protesting. Neither are the horses, which are the senses, going to run hither and thither, because they are purified as well. For such a person who is completely focused on spiritual consciousness, then he has steady intelligence, and is called transcendental intelligence. What is the meaning of transcendental intelligence? We spoke of steady mind. What is transcendental intelligence? What is transcendental? Above the modes of material nature. Who is transcendental? Krishna. What is transcendental intelligence? Intelligence which is guided 100% by the Lord. Right? So for such a person, there is no attachment, no aversion. 100% guided by Krishna, such a person is peaceful at all times. Right? And is completely blissful because he is not affected by the modes. He is not affected by the body. He is not affected by the mind. That can be experienced by us. How can we experience it? Steadying the senses and purifying them. How do you purify them? We use the senses in the Lord's service, they automatically become purified. You bring an apple which is nothing but matter, and you place it before Krishna with a tulsi leaf, and humbly beg Krishna to accept it. That apple, which is nothing but matter, becomes spiritualized. Now matter has been replaced by spirit because now Krishna is involved. Similarly, when the senses come in touch with Krishna, Krishna gets involved, the senses become purified. So, the horses that run hither and thither, they cannot be purified by any other means. You cannot constantly hold those reins. That struggle will somehow or the other make you fall one day or the other. If purification does not occur by mental strength, the yogi does it. Based on their own strength, they restrain their senses, they do all kinds of things to keep it under control. That control cannot go on forever because the senses are being suppressed. The senses need to be purified. Purification occurs by bringing it in touch with Krishna. That's one. What else do we do for intelligence? Now we spoke of two things. Steady mind, transcendental intelligence. What is transcendental intelligence? Intelligence that is in touch with Krishna. So we always consistently read Shastra, but we do not read Shastra for the sake of reading. We read Shastra for the sake of living. You have to progress on. This year, if I read a verse, I read a verse. But next year, if I start living the verse, I have made progress. Am I living the Shastra? There has to be a focus on living, not so much just reading. So when we have transcendental intelligence and a steady mind, peaceful, the person is completely blissful. This occurs when someone is Krishna conscious, when one has moved away from body consciousness. Right? So I'm going to stop here. So we went all over the place today, didn't we? But we came back to Krishna being in the center. So we're okay with that. So let's see if you have any questions. We'll see if we can take any questions. Maybe a couple of questions and we'll stop. The idea is that I'm ready to give up peace to attain Krishna. But after attaining Krishna, I don't even need mental peace. It's a little trick. Isn't that a fact? Is that a fact or not? No. The fact is that there is absolutely no happiness without being peaceful. But can the mind be peaceful at all when it is engaged in pursuing different pleasures? It cannot. When can the mind be peaceful? The mind can only be peaceful when the senses stop agitating the mind. And then the mind surrenders to the dictates of the intelligence. Actually, for one who is completely Krishna conscious, there is no such thing as an independent mind. Today, we have an independent mind, intelligence, soul. A passenger has an objective in the chariot. The horses have their own objectives. The charioteer wants to go on its own direction. Okay? In such a situation, there can never be any peace. When can there be peace? There can be peace when the soul's desire of serving Krishna is taken up seriously by intelligence. Intelligence takes control of the mind. Mind takes control of the senses initially. and engages them in the Lord's service. Senses keep getting engaged in the Lord's service, they become purified. This process is called anartha nivritti. Anartha means that which has no meaning. It has gone out of my life. What is meaningless? Meaningless is the pursuit of sense gratification. That which has no meaning has gone out of our life. Senses are purified. Mind is steady. Intelligence is powerful because it's connected to Krishna. Then there's automatically peace. So the peace referred to here is not peace obtained by restraining ourselves from activity. This is peace obtained because the senses have been purified, intelligence has been purified, and the mind has been purified. Sure. That's what we do, is it not? When you chant, the instruction in chanting is not so much to constantly pull the mind. The instruction in chanting is chant audibly and focus your hearing on what you chant. So the senses are being engaged. The sense of touch is being engaged. Sparsha, very important. The sense of hearing is being engaged. The sense of speech is being engaged. Automatically the mind focuses. You want to close your eyes? Close your eyes, it's better. I would recommend that while you chant, you should close your eyes. Okay? If you spend $2, you can go to CVS and get those blockers for the ears. I have those in my house at all times. I carry one in my pouch. You can block your ears and be completely cut off. You can be completely cut off by blocking your ears. Close your eyes, hold on to the beads, chant, and you will be able to hear it internally. Just focus on that. So, when you start engaging the senses in the Lord's service, the mind automatically calms down. Because the senses are the one which fire the mind. The senses see something. I am seeing something, I want this. The impulse immediately goes to the mind. The mind starts getting agitated. I have to provide, I have to provide, I have to provide. Intelligence has to stop the mind, saying, no, you provided the last time, we got into trouble. Stop. Right? So that's the channel. So you got to engage the senses first. And the senses, once they are engaged, automatically the mind will come into control. So there is a whole thing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. Smaranam is remembering Krishna, does not occur by force. We have to focus on Shravanam, which is hearing, Kirtanam, chanting. Once we focus on that, Smaranam will automatically come when there is purification. Right. It is helpful. If there is any activity during our day which is helpful, it is the chanting of the holy names. However it may be, it could be Namabhas, it could be Namaprad also, it is much better than not doing it. So if you want to chant throughout the day, feel free to chant throughout the day, but do not allow your mind to tell you that you have finished chanting. You have to pick up your beads and do your 16 rounds. Prabhu, I was driving home and I looked at the time, my drive is 45 minutes, by the time I reach home, I would have chanted 7 rounds. Do you agree? I disagree. You cannot do 2 things at a time. You cannot keep an eye on the road. We want you to concentrate while driving. We want to concentrate while chanting. You cannot accomplish both. But when I'm driving, I can constantly chant the Lord's names. Nothing wrong with it. It's addition. It is bonus points. I will tell you something. There are 3 different levels of chanting. One is kirtan, which is loud chanting. The next is chanting on the beads. The 3rd level is manasika japa. All 3 shastrically are bona fide. Okay? But we have been given orders by our spiritual master to chant on the beads. So we follow those orders when we are doing sadhana bhakti. Okay? Those orders, when we follow those, would give us the strength. So is that the best way to do it? Yes. Because that's what has been asked by us from Prabhupada. That's the best way. When there is time, there are devotees who are advanced who don't chant on the beats. They chant at the level of the mind. Manasika seva is considered to be supreme seva. They do it. But for that, you require a mind which has attained samadhi. You cannot do manasa seva with a mind where 100 thoughts come in if you just close your eyes. You need manasika seva, it has to be steady. That's what we try and do. Until then, We chant a little audibly, engage our senses, purify our senses, the mind gets purified. The anarthas leave us. Anything else? How do we prevent the senses from agitating the mind? Exactly as I said, engage the senses in the Lord's service. When you engage the senses in the Lord's service, the senses automatically become purified of lust, which is the desire to enjoy separately. Automatically, they would stop agitating the mind. See, do we get agitated when we want to serve Krishna? We don't. We get agitated when we want to serve ourselves. So the more and more we train the mind and the senses to serve Krishna, the better it is and the less agitated they would be. They would become purified. Yes? It's a matter of convenience. If you close your eyes, it's convenient. Okay? If you feel it's important for you to see a picture of Krishna while chanting, so be it. We have no objection to that. I was just sharing what works for me. For me, I have to have my ears blocked. I have to be alone. I close my eyes and I chant. That works better for me. I can hear. I'm chanting inside, right? If you in the wall, on the corner of the wall. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. See, there's a favorite spot for everyone. Choose your favorite spot and stick to it. If you keep changing your favorite spots, your mind will play games with you. That's very important. Is there anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki